It's funny, the word longevity is like a little buzzword for me. I have a hard time when I hear it because it's like another commodity that the healthcare industry is trying to get people to buy through testing, through supplements, through medications, and it kind of maddens me. I'm partial more to the frame of health span as opposed to lifespan, right? Like we're trying to increase our amount of time well on earth and compress the time of sickness or disease, right? Because we all know we're going to go. And don't we all want to be like my grandfather, who spent the morning grocery shopping with my grandmother? And she said, Henry, why don't you go sit in the chair and I'll make you lunch? And he sat in his favorite recliner. And by the time she came back with his lunch, he had passed, right? There was no long, drawn out, cognitive decline, physical decline, need for healthcare institutions that are understaffed and all the things. So when I think about increasing health span, not just living longer, because I don't really want to live very long if I'm not going to be well. I would just as soon be taken out. That's me. Respect other people and how they want to do it. But I think about, food, obviously, the food that I eat, eating food that comes from the earth, eating food that I could hunt or gather, eating the rainbow, eating diverse food, being protein forward. Still, research lands on a modified Mediterranean as the go-to. Like, what do I eat? How do I eat? How do I do it? I don't know. There's so much information. Science is still, not that science is everything, but it's something. Science still lands on a modified Mediterranean diet as being yielding the optimal health results for the most people. So if you need a broad guideline, there it is. Moving, I definitely am a believer. You use it or you lose it. If we don't, I think about my grandmother. It's interesting how much my grandparents inform some of my ideas. My grandmother, who wore a bun on the top of her head for the majority of her life until she was however old she was, when she could no longer get her hands up to make her bun, and then cut it off because she couldn't make her bun. Because if we never reach behind us, we will get to a point where we can no longer reach behind us. And that's where I become a huge fan of things like yoga, where it just asks us to move outside of what our typical daily movement patterns are, to do things that we don't do as often so that we can maintain flexibility. I think that the strength training piece is huge too, and that strength is really tied in with mobility, right? So like if you fall on the floor because you tripped on the rug, can you actually get yourself up? Do you have enough muscle mass to protect yourself from injury? Because the data on the broken hip, and that being one of the fastest paths to death for women, is not about the hip break. It's about the recovery and the loss of muscle mass that happens with being sedentary and not being able to regain that, so that there is endurance and flexibility and mobility and the ability to get up off the floor the next time that we fall, or get up off the toilet, or carry the groceries in, or bring the wood in for the fire, or whatever the thing is. So food, movement outside our range of motion, preservation or maintenance or muscle development, I think are huge. And then of course there is the mental, emotional aspects, right, of modulating stress in a healthy way. None of us are immune, and staying connected to things outside of ourselves. And that again can be beings, human or otherwise, and the natural world, right? Just sort of there seems to be a little bit of like an imploding that happens when people age. There becomes, right, the world and the perspective gets narrower and narrower and narrower. And some of the wellest women that I have the amazing privilege to sit with are in their 80s, and they are involved in the food pantry, and they are engaged in the community, and they are traveling to see their children, and they are reading the news, but not too much, right? They're like, their minds and their spirits are engaged beyond the confines of their world. And that seems to really be significant.